Hi, folks. This is Don Meisner with the North Country Fishing Report. Well, I said in one of my other reports I was going to tell you about my last day's fishing, and I think it's appropriate and important that I share this with you because it's the most heartfelt and the most direct experience that I can report to you because it's coming just from me. So anyway, I was out yesterday trying to find northern pike and largemouth bass in this pond that I wade. And I got to tell you, for most of the time and most of the areas I normally catch those fish in, I got no strikes. And I kept thinking, okay, maybe it's because there's no wind on the water is glassy smooth, those fish aren't going to hit, they're not going to hit. And I was getting pretty beat because I'd walked a huge distance, and with heavy waders and sinking into the muck and all the things that take place when you're wading in a pond like that, there's a lot of danger, I can say, that can come if you're not really careful and if you're not aware of all the things that you have to do if you're going to wade. And again, I'll put that off to another report, but I want to tell you what happened. I'd spent a long time, hundreds of casts, and I really think so, hundreds of casts with nothing. And I'm using a twin-bladed willow leaf spinnerbait with copper blades and an orange head and green and yellow and brown living rubber tail. This was how this bait was. Normally, copper has never been a color I use, and yet lately it's been fabulous for me. So I'm using what I know works and nothing. And I get to this one section, nothing looked any different. And I'm debating, I'm thinking, my body's getting cold. I've been in the water a long time. It's getting near to the end of the day. I think I'm gonna head off into the woods and do my trek back. And all of a sudden I feel a tap. And I'm fishing basically for northern pike, and when they hit hard. And this was a tap. And I set the hook anyway, and I've got a fish, but it isn't very big. And I bring it in, and it's a largemouth bass, about 10 or 11 inches. And I think, wow, I usually don't catch little bass in this pond. Put it back in the water. 2 casts later, tap, another largemouth bass, the same size. And I'm thinking, holy cow. I put it back, I cast again, and tap, I miss it. And I bring it in, I'm thinking, wow, there's a school of largemouth, small largemouth bass, all the same year class in this weedy, mucky area that I'm wading in right now. What if I put a Senko on? Anybody can catch a fish on a Senko. It's one of the deadliest lures ever made, and bass love them. So I put on a Senko in the color that usually works for me. Nothing. I cast, I work it ever so slowly, waiting for that tap. I'm thinking, bass loves Senkos. Nothing. I change colors. Nothing. I hurriedly put my spinnerbait back on, and bam, I catch another fish. There's a lot of lessons for me in this. It was a discovery that there's a group of small bass. Shows they're reproducing in there. I'd never caught them small like that. They were all together, and why wouldn't they hit a Senko? And why were they hitting the spinnerbait? And what I believe is because their primary diet now had shifted from summer, and they were feeding on perch or shad. So, anyway, it was a discovery for me. It was a great joy. It doesn't matter to me that much whether I get a big fish or a little fish. It's the strike, it's the experience, it's the success that comes from being able to get that strike. That's a big part of my fishing experience. But this is something I want you to be aware of right now. These fish are grouping together. They'll often group together by year class. And remember that young fish are going to act differently than older fish. They haven't learned the ropes yet. There's still a lot of them that won't survive because of the mistakes they make. But these young fish were all keyed in on other bait fish that they were eating, and the spinnerbait was half their size, and yet they were hitting it. So, lo and behold, I learned something else. Yesterday's fishing was great. Until next time, folks, this is Don Meisner with the North Country Fishing Report.